Okay, we are live. Sorry, hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner. Wow, right off the off. We've got George Aldrich tonight. We've got Tate Niawa, and we are here to give our review on Blade Runner, which is the original 1982 neo-noir science fiction film directed by Ridley Scott. We're doing this in anticipation for Blade Runner 2049, which I think is one of our most anticipated films of the year. It's actually out tomorrow here in the UK. And yeah, we're here to talk about probably one of the most prolific and iconic science fiction films of all time, maybe even films of all time. But yeah, so I guess we'll kick off with sort of our first time watching it, which cut we watch, because there's I think there's 3 main cuts of this film, but I think there's probably a lot more out there. I know that Ridley Scott made a whole bunch of cuts to this movie throughout the time, finally settled on the final cut with 2007. So yeah, anyone want to kick off with Blade Runner?
I want to start off, Chris, before we go into Blade Runner, by saying Google Hangouts has saved your life. The start of the video didn't have about 5 seconds of awkward
that's good.
It just has the Hangouts logo instead, and apparently it picks up your voice automatically and knows when to start the video based off that.
Okay, that's good. Cool. That's fine.
But yes, my first seeing of Blade Runner, I think I'm the only person who's actually seen anything other than the final cut. Because my first viewing was the director's cut, and I saw that on VHS video, probably when I was like 8 or 9 or something like that. And I sat down with my dad, and I was like, I'm starting to get into sci-fi films and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, I'll make you watch one. And he sat me down, and we watched Blade Runner together. And to be honest, at the time, I think I was too young to really truly appreciate it. And I saw it was quite a fun film. I liked the film, obviously, but I found some parts of the plot quite hard to follow and stuff like that. I found some of the narratives quite difficult to understand, especially seeing as the director's cut doesn't have everything the final cut obviously has, to kind of explain the ending. And I know between the different versions, you get different aspects of the ending, and you get different aspects of the entire film in general. But from seeing that, since then, I've seen the final cut. I haven't seen the original cut before, but it's one of my favorite films of all time. I really do love it. And yeah, that's about it.
I remember the first time I saw this, actually. I must have been about 14, 15. I was ill off school, and back in the days of being ill at secondary school, when you legitimately were, I just sit at home in bed and watch films. I think everyone probably did that before the days of Netflix, where you had to go and actually grab a film. And I'd just been bought Blade Runner on DVD because I was getting into sci-fi a bit like Tate. Well, I was already into it, but I was really starting to get into films more and stuff like that. And there's so much hype on Blade Runner that I put the DVD in. I was bought it, obviously, DVD before the time of Blu-ray and actually me going out and buying Blu-rays. I remember it wasn't what I expected, because at that point of my life, Harrison Ford was Han Solo. Harrison Ford was Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford was himself in every film, and it was kind of like the modern Harrison Ford, but playing him in the 80s. Yeah. And I wouldn't say that's a bad thing, but the first time I watched it, because I didn't know anything about the film, its reputation, I thought it would be, I don't want to say better than what it was, because all I know I can say is the first time I watched it, I was slightly disappointed, and I understood it, but didn't appreciate it. Second time I watched it, only 2 years later, I'd already been studying film at this point, a better understanding of film, everything. But this was one of those films on the second viewing, you really, really, really noticed the difference. And then over time, I think I saw it the weekend on the 4K cut. Yeah, it's the final. I've only seen the final cut, but they did a 4K re-release, which I picked up the weekend, and it gets better every time. I think I've seen it 4 or 5 times now, but it's truly one of the best sci-fi films I've ever seen in my life. And I think a lot of people, I mean, even when it came out in the 80s, it's, there's nothing really new to say about the film. Oh, but it was a critical, they didn't like it. Oh, it didn't make money. Oh, but it became this classic. And, films do become that over time. And this is one of the best examples of one. And so much that the original announcement for 2049 was, there was an uproar when that came out, because no one wanted Blade Runner in 2049, not a single person. Even like bringing the director on board, there were still questions. It was a good director, yes. For the trailers, there were still skeptics, but now with the reviews, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think a lot of people are. But it's one of those sort of films that every time I watch it, I appreciate it more, and I can't really say I do that for a lot of films, because there are some films which you watch again and they're great, but they'll always be great. But this, it just goes up a level each time.
Yeah, I'm kind of exactly the same there. I would probably put this as my number one film. If someone said, like, have you ever watched a film that you had a completely different opinion of the second time? Always go to Blade Runner. So I bought the Final Cut DVD. If I'm buying a DVD, I always tend to buy an extended version or a director's cut version, just because I think it's the more complete version of the film. So someone recommended it to me, bought it for, like, on a DVD haul, and I made the mistake of watching this film about 11, half 11 at night. And Blade Runner is really not a film, especially when you're watching it for the first time, to watch it that late at night. So, like you, George, I was aware of its reputation, everything like that, one of the best sci-fi films. And I was bored. I was incredibly bored. It was a very slow-paced, almost dreamlike movie, which I didn't... Obviously, when you watch it multiple times, that's all part of the layer of the film. And I fell asleep. I think I got to the bit where they get to the guy who's created all the toys for himself, with Pris, and I just tuned out, fell asleep. And then I think I picked it up like a week ago, and I didn't want to carry on the film from where I got to last time. So I thought, right, I'll watch it from the beginning. I'll give it another shot. And night and day, absolutely loved it. Picked up on more of the themes and just everything like that. And now it does get better every time I watch it. I think it was last year, the BFI did a rescreening of it with 4K restoration. And it's one of the best cinema-going experiences I've ever had. Tate, you went to see it last week on the big screen. How was that?
I got goosebumps on the first scene. I started to kind of well up, and I could hear people around me welling up with Tears in Rain, sorry. It was quite interesting. The crowd that went to see it, the cinema was completely packed. No empty seats in the house. Which, even with the Star Wars premiere that I went to go see in my own local cinema, that still had like 1 or 2 seats which were empty. This was completely packed out, and completely booked out beforehand. But it was very interesting. The people who were actually viewing it, it was a lot of older people who'd obviously seen it when it first came out and stuff like that. And then you have a bunch of like early 20s to mid 20s of people who probably have been kind of known about it and probably seen it at home and then just wanted to go see it because of the cinematic spectacle. And it was just fantastic. I can't actually see why it was given such negative or kind of downed reviews when it first came out.
I probably think because it came out, I believe, the same month as E.T.
E.T., yeah.
Blade Runner. Was Wrath of Khan out the same month?
It was a big month for sci-fi, wasn't it?
There was this mega sci-fi month of I think it was May or June 1982, where everything came out, and obviously E.T. overtook Star Wars, became the highest grossed film of all time that month, well, that year. So I just guess that no one went to watch Blade Runner because everyone was probably talking about E.T. But no, that was I'm trying to remember. I think there were 4 big films that month, but it was a mega year, and I think that's something to do why. But also, I guess because of it being Ridley Scott, they probably wanted it to be like Alien or something like that, and it was completely new and original to itself. So I can understand why they wouldn't like it, because given just of the 3 of us, me and Chris weren't, Tate said you're too young. Me and Chris, I'd even say I was too young, even though I was 14. I think some of the films, repeat viewings help it. And back in them days, yeah, it's easy to go to the cinema, but would you have been able to repeat viewing a Blade Runner that month knowing what else was out? I don't know, but it's when it come up on home video that it really got the following it deserved. So that's great to hear. And I think that's something to do why just the time of it coming out.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if the really crummy theatrical cut had anything to do with it, because that's the one with the really, really bad voiceover from Harrison Ford. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently he notoriously recorded it really badly with the hope that they wouldn't use it in the cut. And they did, and that's the one with the ending where they use stock footage from The Shining when they give like the happy ending driving through, mountain ranges and rivers and everything like that.
Do you know what? We're just going to dive into the straight into the deep end here, because one of the biggest changes, spoiler by the way, between the original cut and the final cut is that in the original cut.
Sorry, I have the 4. I have the 4 films. June the 4th, 1982, Star Trek 2. June 11th, E.T. June the 25th, Blade Runner and The Thing.
Oh wow!
Jesus.
I want to go back to
on
1982.
On top of Tron coming out 2 weeks after that, so
Ooh,
that's
a big year for that was a huge year for sci-fi.
yeah, that was
Jesus.
part of the post Star Wars sci-fi boom. But just imagine something happening this month. That'd be mental. Well, this year, I mean, but that's probably why.
But so in the original cut, the ending is obviously the happy ending, them getting away and stuff like that. But I believe in the original cut they don't have the unicorn dream in there.
No, that was added in the director's cut.
And with there not being a unicorn dream in there, Edward James Olmos's character leaving the unicorn at the end on the floor basically said, "I have been here, and I'm allowing you guys to run off into the sunset. I'm allowing you to get away." By ending the unicorn dream, you'll completely change the ending to, is he a replicant? Isn't he a replicant? And I think in the director's cut, you just get a flash of it. Very brief flash whilst he's sleeping. In the actual final cut, you get a little bit, the flash that was originally there. Then it cuts away to him sleeping or him slightly awake and daydreaming. And then you get the unicorn fully going through and stuff like that. And just small changes like that completely changed the film from what it started off as to what it is now.
What do you think of that change, by the way?
I prefer the change that they made. I think there are too many films where people are riding off into the sunset, especially in the 80s, where it was one of the cheesiest times for films. Like, if you have an ending which makes you question everything that you've seen in the film, one that is also quite kind of bittersweet, because, I mean, what would you guys say? Do you think Deckard is a replicant?
Well, I guess we'll find out in 2049, won't we?
Well,
but
I'm going to say now, but Ridley Scott, after the 2007 thing, said that he was, but you don't know whether that's been implemented into the film or not.
Well, it clearly was, because I mean, it wasn't his original intention, was it? He made the film as he saw fit in 1982,
No,
and then it was only
the original cut was not the cut that he wanted, Ridley Scott. It was the cut the studio wanted.
But the footage of the unicorn was stock footage from Legend. His other film, his fantasy film with Tim Curry that he made and Tom Cruise. So I don't know if you can say that if he hodgepodged a scene in that was unused footage from another film, that was his original vision for his film. I did actually like the change of the unicorn. However, Red Letter Media put out a review, and that was with two people that kind of like Blade Runner, but they see a lot of problems with it. And having watched their review, I did kind of go back to the movie and go, oh my God, these guys make sense. And I don't know now if I do like the change with that Deckard as a replicant, because I think even if you go without, and also like the writers of the film didn't like the idea of being a replicant. I think in the original source material, the novel, he's just a human. He's not a replicant or anything like that. I think that there's a lot of plot holes that are created if you have the idea that he is a replicant, especially when they say that Rachel was like a new model, Nexus Prime, one of a kind, a very new design. Also, if you look at Roy Batty, and he's like a combat model, and all the replicants seem to have superhuman strength or agility.
But here's the thing,
you know,
Chris, in the film, from rewatching it, they say that all of them are built in with shortened lifespans, so they're built in with that. It is physically put in to shorten lifespans so that they work for 4 years, then they get a new model. With Deckard, they could have just literally, they could have had him with implanted memories, or they could have just removed the extended lifespan. And it makes sense as far as a government's perspective or a company's perspective to, instead of having like humans going down and hunting these machines and stuff like that, have a machine do it. Like, then if the problem goes wrong, you can't blame the humans, you blame the machine. I think that Rachel asked the question, have you ever taken the test, or have you ever like retired a human before? And I think that all comes down to the fact that if he is a replicant, then it's a scapegoat for everyone else. I think that's probably what the next film was going to play off. The fact that replicants being used as scapegoats. And I mean, I've seen the 3 short films before the next film, and I feel like it's going in that direction, maybe. But who knows?
George, how about you?
What with the changes at the end of the first one?
Yeah, like, do you like the idea that Deckard might be a replicant, or do you like it where he is just a human and he?
I prefer it that he's a human. I just think it's not cheap that if he is a replicant, because that makes it intriguing, but it means that they've had to do well. He must have been a special one-off creation to have lasted 30 years. He's part of a 30-year cycle. I really hope he's a human, just for the sake that it just saves a lot of backpedaling. I like the questioning, like the ambiguous of it. That's what I like, the ambiguity with the film. And that's what I think its impact has had on people. Not as clear cut as Inception because they've meddled in it, but
Yeah.
I feel with the final cut, because I'm not well, it doesn't sound snobbish. I'm not going to watch the other cuts because we've been given the final cut. That's what's there on the shelves to buy. That's what they want us to watch. That's canon.
Yeah.
Similar thing we can do with the Star Wars films. I know everyone's got different opinions on that, but what they've got on the shelf to me is the one I'm going to be watching at home. And it's fine doing the other ones, but if Ridley Scott's made these changes to his film on purpose, then to me that's okay. This is the version he wants me to watch. I'm intrigued to see what they're doing if he is one, and if he's going to be a replicant, then at least they've commissioned a 2.5-hour film to explain why he is one. But at the minute, no. After I see it on Sunday, maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, I haven't seen obviously the original cuts. I've seen like one or two. The voiceover you guys mentioned, I've heard that, and it literally just sounds like Harrison Ford walking up to the microphone and just being like, "I'm Harrison Ford." It sounds exactly like that over the top of the audio. They got rid of that, but what I've been given in the final cut's absolutely fine with me.
It's funny,
and it does leave it ambiguous because there's a shot where he's got the red eye. He's out of focus,
Yeah.
and whether it's just, I think it's probably
the
slightly
lighting.
intentional.
Yeah.
It could be the lighting, but I gather there's been so many cuts, maybe not. But this is the era of people pausing every frame of every second of every
And
minute
there's
of every
that
hour.
line, Rachel says as well, like, he ever taken that test?
Yeah.
I think she
And
said.
then he's fast asleep, and I like that line. That's a subtle way of doing it, which leaves the question, leaves the door open.
So I think it'd be more ambiguous had they have left the unicorn scene out. I think when you do have that unicorn scene, obviously we haven't seen 2049, but before that, you kind of have to take it at face value, right? That he is a replicant with that vision and that origami figure at the end. There's only really.
Or you could take it as
I thought it was the calling card from the other cop. That he just leaves the origami things behind.
But the fact that he had the unicorn internal
Green.
memory,
But we can also think it's also because Ridley Scott's obsessed with unicorns all the
yes,
time.
he is. Yeah, he has a bit of a unicorn fetish.
But then you could, at the same time, think of it as Edward James Olmos's character also being a replicant and dreaming of the same unicorn.
Yeah, maybe.
There are
Maybe
multiple
all
ways
of the
you can
Blade
see it.
Runners are actually replicants.
Maybe all of the Blade Runners are actually unicorns.
Wow, get Lord Voldemort on them, suck some blood, and they'll be lasting another 30 years.
Speaking
I-
of lasting for another 30 years, what do we think to Harrison Ford in this movie?
It's
I literally just see Harrison Ford, like...
This is a completely different performance to the other ones, though.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah,
Like,
I like it.
He's very energetic as Indiana Jones. He's very sarcastic as Han Solo. In this film, he is depressed. He is
He's like an
almost
alcoholic as well.
an alcoholic, almost unenthusiastic, but that plays to the character's role. He doesn't want to go and do this final job. They're asking him to. It's an inconvenience to him. He's happy with just living out his life normally. And yeah, I think in Tom's first Best Picture, or when it was the original form of the Best Picture, or whatever it was called.
It's Film Reflection, wasn't it? I think
That's the one, Film Reflection.
Yeah.
That whole kind of rape scene thing. He's a very dark character, very conflicted character, and I credit his performance for it. But at the same time, you could see it as quite a lazy performance.
Yeah.
It's just the way that you interpret the film and how much you think he actually put into the acting performance. I think, as far as Harrison Ford is concerned, he put in a lot more than most other performances. He can just be like cocky and like sarcastic and a little bit eccentric in Star Wars, or he can be kind of hard, actiony, and like, I know, energetic in Indiana Jones and other films that he's done. But this film, it's completely the opposite to everything else he's done.
Yeah, I think it's kind of necessary for the character to be sort of bored and tired and weary and everything like that, because that is essentially where we find the character at the beginning of this film, and sort of how he continues on. And by the end, he does get that character arc. He does get that realization and almost acceptance for life, and he finds out that life can be beautiful when you have Rutger Hauer's monologue at the end. And it looks like Ryan Gosling's doing a similar kind of performance based on the trailers for 2049. It's that very subdued, you could say bored and very uncharismatic style to the character.
That's like Ryan Gosling in every film, though, isn't it?
Oh, hey, do you have anything to say about that?
No. Look at films like Drive. All of his films.
Yeah.
I mean, but La La Land. Come on, he's miserable in that film. He even says it. Oh, I'm singing a jazz club. I didn't get with her. He's miserable. But I like him.
It's one of the most devastating moments of like.
No, it's not. Don't say
cinema.
No, it's not. It's not.
But yes, it is.
It's not.
No, I
agree with you in Drive. Like his character in Drive is quite monotone, and very mysterious. I mean, we only get he doesn't even have a name. He's the driver. He's meant to be kind of.
I thought it was going for that style, though, wasn't it? Like those sort of like 80s B-movie action films where you have like the silent stoic.
Drive had definite vibes of Blade Runner going through it, especially from the visual stylings.
I'm loving his coat in the new one, though. I will say that.
Yeah.
I'd like to buy that coat.
But again, with like the whole sort of like a lot of the human characters in this do feel very robotic, and I think that was intentional, obviously, because you want to have the oh god, what are they called? Replicants. You want them to appear more human, and so you do have that change in character there, and obviously you sympathise with the Rutger Hauer character and the rest of them. So I think it was intentional from the filmmaker to have the human characters more subdued, and also it just kind of adds to the world in a weird way. That subdued sense to everyone, offset with the beautiful visuals of the world, it does give that really sort of uneasy sight into the futuristic world of now 2019, 2 years from now. So will we have those pillars of fire blaring up from the city? We don't know. But
well, it's like America under Trump, isn't it? So
entirely. So yeah, let's give it 2 years. Let's see what happens. Tate, I think you hinted at like sort of, or was it you, George, talked about like the borderline rape of the relationship between Harrison Ford's character of Deckard and Rachel. I think this is probably one of my weakest aspects of the film, because by the end of the film, they want you to like believe in this couple, this like love that's flourished between these two, and I just don't give a shit throughout the entire film.
I think it's less of that, and I think it's more of she has nowhere else really to go, and it's the sad state of affairs that she's been left in. The safest person that she can be with is the person who's trying to kill her, or the person who's tasked with killing her. And I think she realizes that, and she has to kind of go along with that scene, however horrible it is, because she knows it's the only way that she could possibly survive. If she goes out in the streets, or if she pisses him off, she's dead. And she doesn't want that. She wants to live like the replicants who he normally chases down can't live anymore. And she knows that there's a target on her head now, and she knows any missteps, and that's it. So she kind of is almost forced to go along with it. And I think Harrison Ford's character, as the alcoholic, like dead end kind of character that he is, realizes that and knows that he can take advantage. And it's a big power play move from his character. And I think it's almost, as far as seeing Harrison Ford's character and the way that it's set out in the film, that scene is almost unavoidable when you really think about it. From the way that they wanted the film to go and the way that they set up the characters, that is a situation which you can see happening. You don't want it to happen, obviously, but at the same time, it's a scene which is necessary to show almost how far his character has fallen and how far her character is willing to go to survive, if that makes sense.
Now, I haven't watched many noir films, so I don't know if that, in terms of like relationships in noir films, if that's a common theme, if you have
noir films, that is very that's not seen regularly. You see a lot of especially when you watch like if we're talking about just like 70s, 80s, 90s noir and stuff like that. I looked at films like Chinatown with Jack Nicholson, and that doesn't have not from what I recall any rape scenes or anything like that.
Certainly not between the main protagonist and
sex
the
is
love interest.
used very heavily in noir. It's quite rare to see a noir film which doesn't have some form of relationship forming or some form of relationship that's at the center, because you have to have a femme fatale in one way, shape, or form, whether that is a male femme fatale or a female femme fatale, or a character who is the object of desire in some way, shape, or form. That will always take place in noir film. It's almost part of its sequence. But no, it's not usually done the way that Blade Runner did it.
And that's why the theatrical cut, the studios wanted to give them the happy Hollywood lovey-dovey ending, and which obviously was removed. I like the ambiguous ending where they don't know where they're running off to, and I'm sure we're going to get more information about that in 2049. George, what did you think of the relationship, or do you have any?
I don't buy it at all.
Yeah.
I don't say favorite, not a favorite scene, but to me, one of the best scene between the two characters is that scene at the start where he's there like, oh yeah, you're real, your memory is this of your mother, there's a spider, there's that. That's one of the better scenes because it just dismisses her entire life, and that's something Harrison Ford would do to someone in real life. But I just don't buy it. I don't think it's designed. It finishes as the stereotypical Hollywood they got away together thing, but I didn't ever buy into it. I thought, if anything, when she saves his life from Leon, I don't think he expected her to, and he's probably the guilt of him telling her it's a replicant more than anything that carries him to not be with her but help her out. Yeah. And I see it more as that than a romance. Like, obviously there's that dodgy rape scene, but that's probably just because he's a borderline alcoholic more than anything.
Just like completely attached and everything.
Yeah, I've never seen it as a legitimate relationship. I mean, I guess it's meant to be, but that's my opinion of it. That I've never bought it. Still never have done at this age. Not that we want a prequel of another young Harrison Ford spin-off film, but he's obviously had a pretty rough life up to be that disparate with people.
Yeah.
But I like the fact we don't get that much of a backstory with him, but then that borderlines into the whole, is he a replicant, is he not?
Yeah. And the whole plot of the films just feels very self-contained. Like, it's a very simple premise. Like, he's pulled back in to essentially kill 4 replicants. Like, it's a very sort of easy plot on the surface, but it's the themes that pull into it. And for me, that comes in with the character of Rutger Hauer. I mean, we can talk about the 4 replicants as a whole if you want, but I think maybe we're all in agreement here that Rutger Hauer is without a doubt the best character in this film.
Oh, by far.
He's definitely the most sympathetic one out of all of them, and I think gets sort of like the most profound, I don't know, story arc, character arc, but he's definitely the center of the whole film for me.
It's something that I discussed with my dad after watching it this time round. Who is the villain of the film? I would say it's Deckard. I would say that Deckard is the villain of this film. Sure, we see it from his perspective, and we see it as him hunting down this person, but
Leon.
Like, as far as the film is concerned, Rutger Hauer's character of Roy Batty just wants freedom at any cost.
He just wants life.
And he wants life. He wants to extend his life. And if you look at it from that angle, he isn't the hero of the film, but he sure ain't the villain. The person who is the villain is the person who's willing to go outstanding lengths to hunt him down and cut short his life, even though it's going to end anyway.
But he did kill.
He did kill, but he did it to survive because he is being forced into a situation where it's kill or be killed.
Well, they're in
no, not Deckard. I was talking about when he Oberyn Martelled
he kills,
and then he kills the creepy plastic obsessive guy after. Sorry, is it Sebastian?
Yeah.
He says, "Sorry, Sebastian," and he runs away. They cut away. Now, I wanted to see that death because I mean he's pretty strong. We get that, but
I will say those toys are pretty fucking creepy.
I want to point out.
Is it? Well, I almost said the M word then. Is it an actor or is it? Is it an actor? The little toys are they actors?
Some of them are. Some of them are.
Some of them. Right. I just always needed to check that because it was so creepy. Nice. The one with the Pinocchio nose.
Yeah.
And obviously we've got Junior Harley Quinn as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
wanted to say, like, he kills Tyrell because he finds out that obviously that he is being created flawed, and he's being created flawed for a reason, and because of that kind of caused him to rage out, knowing that his life will be cut short anyway, and the one person who could have changed it is almost refusing to change it.
Yeah.
And
but it's an act of desperation, isn't it? Ultimately, like, he's exhausted all of his options at that point, and they've got precious few
If
moments
he
left.
leaves, he will still be hunted down, and you could see it as a way of this person is the creator who creates imperfection on purpose and makes his kind suffer on purpose. So by killing him, he spares the fates of the futures of all of the other things that might be created by him. You could see it as him almost taking down the leader of a person who oppresses his own kind, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the film in many different ways. That's what makes it so good and what makes it so loved. There are loads of ways of interpreting it, and it's stood the test of time, obviously, with so many people going to go watch it, like on my rescreening, and so many people going to go watch this new film. But yeah, no, his performance was brilliant.
It's a very tried and tested thing, isn't it? And especially with stories like this, the whole creation, killing, or confronting the creator in some way. And I mean, this film has had a knock-on effect with loads of other films, stylistically, visually, thematically, all that stuff. Films like The Matrix, for example. I guess you could even go to some anime, maybe, with Ghost in the Shell. I know that came out in the 80s, though, as well, didn't it? That was like mid-80s, I think. Maybe Akira as well.
It's that sort of cyberpunk era, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess that's a good segue to, like, I mean, we could talk Tears in Rain, but I mean, everyone's talked Tears in Rain before. In fact, we've talked about it on one of our Battle of the Brackets before.
Yes, we have.
So for me, let's move on to, other than Rutger Hauer, the best thing in this movie, which is literally just the visuals. Even by today's standards,
I'd say music over visuals. I would say personally music over visuals. However, they do go hand in hand.
But yeah, very much connected.
They connected in this film.
Yeah.
I like the soundtrack, but I only like the soundtrack accompanied to the visuals on the screen. Likewise, the visuals on the screen, they just work so well within each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what gives you that, I don't say joy watching it, but that's what makes it that extra bit special. So on Saturday, when I put the 4K cut in, obviously I'm new to the 4K stuff, blah, blah, blah. But that first shot of LA looked unreal. And the film is aging so well. In the sense, but naturally back then, practical effects, not CGI, just vaguely going off into 2049. That's what I feel the new one's going to be. I mean, I think there's a lot more practical than you'd expect of a film like Blade Runner for the new one. But I love everything, like basically the lightsaber umbrellas.
Yeah,
everything feels like so right, because it's not sci-fi to the level of every single thing has to be futuristic. They're flying cars, legitimately like normal cars, just that flying. It feels like a used universe, and
it's
I
like
think
the original Star Wars, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that way, how it is this fantasy world, but they've taken elements from our everyday living and smashed it together.
The good thing was that the first film didn't look clean. If the first film had looked very, very clean, I'd say like The Matrix. I don't think The Matrix will age very well within the next 10, 15 years because the film looks so clean in some parts. Have that rustic look that can connect you back to society, and you can't pin a date on it at any point during time. When you look at the Tyrell Court building, Jesus Christ, that is still some of the best visuals that have been put to film.
It was a miniature as well, wasn't it? I haven't watched all the behind the scenes, but I know that was definitely.
But at the same time, that is better than almost every CGI film you see or have seen since then.
It's the blend. Like I'm guessing they had concept art, like some visual effects, obviously, but the miniatures as well. Definitely did a great job. Cinematography as well. I mean, my God, that shot where the slow motion shot where the dancer replicants running through the plate glass windows with all the lights reflected. That's probably one of my favorite shots in the movie. There's so many shots in this film that you could pull. But the Vangelis score. I actually do like listening to it on its own. But with the visuals, it is one of the most immersive worlds experiences with the music. It's very dreamlike. It's a very varied soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's not like you do have the synth. It's very synth heavy. You have some sort of like exotic, like choral music in there as well. It's a very sort of strange, weird listening experience with it. But it is one of my favorite film soundtracks ever written. And I hope 2049 in some way has a soundtrack that probably won't be as comparable, but it's still in keeping with the universe of
the Zimmer. Well, what
he's helped out on it.
No, so Denis Villeneuve was talking about in his press tour. They asked him how come Hans Zimmer took over from Johan Johansson.
Johansson, yeah.
He actually said that the issue they were having is that Johan Johansson did a fantastic score. He said, but he couldn't get the synthesizing right to make it sound like Blade Runner.
Right.
And he had Hans Zimmer come in after Dunkirk and basically
work his magic.
Yeah, so I don't know I don't know what it's going to go down as, if it's going to go as a Hans Zimmer soundtrack, because that's what it's being listed as on like pre-order sites and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, if you look at his early career, it's very much, I think he's really well suited to the Bergerac universe. And I'm very excited to listen to it, because I think, going off the trailers for the new one, the visuals look stunning. And like we said earlier, the music is as important as the visuals. They go one in hand together. And I really hope we get that. But just, you could play the film before, well, I don't want to say on mute, but you could take out the dialogue, try and have it as a silent film. Obviously, you wouldn't understand the clue, but it would still be stunning.
Yeah.
Just watching it. I'd love to just visit LA.
Yeah.
One critique I actually have of the original film, when I watched the final cut, I think they repeat the soundtrack. In the final cut, they repeat the soundtrack a couple of times, and they cut the soundtrack very oddly in one scene. It's the scene where they're in the apartment, and Deckard is talking to Rachel about her memories and her past basically being fake, and they switch between Memoirs of Green and what's the other song in the soundtrack? Blade Runner Blues. They cut straight between them, almost like cutting halfway through the song of Memoirs from Green straight into Blade Runner Blues. And then they reprise Memoirs of Green later on in the film, about 20 minutes later, and play it start to finish. So it's almost as if they played half the song, and then cut to Blade Runner Blues, played half the song of Blade Runner Blues, stops music for a bit, then plays Memoirs of Green again like 20 minutes later, and then afterwards plays Blade Runner Blues again 20 minutes later. So I think there may have been a little bit with the sound mixing there. I'm not in the final cut.
I haven't noticed that at all. I know that there's one song on the soundtrack, which is actually probably my favourite song on the soundtrack, that doesn't even feature in the film, which is Rachel's song. So I don't know if there was going to be a moment where they had the original...
Was that in one of the original cuts, or was it in the final? Which one?
I've only seen the final cut, so I have no idea.
So I think that may have been in the original cut or the director's cut. They may have added that in.
I'll have to look out for that. That gives me another excuse to watch Blade Runner. My review on the film, I can see now why it does have that, that masterpiece title on it, as some people say. But it is one film where if someone says, I don't like Blade Runner, I found it boring, I can completely understand where they're coming from, and I can see people having that opinion of it. It's one that does require multiple viewings, and I know for me personally, sometimes if I say like, why should I watch a film multiple times? Like if I don't like it the first time, then that's a problem with the film. But I genuinely believe that this one, you do have to give it that multiple viewings to not just get it, but just appreciate it and become more immersed in the world. It is one of my favorite worlds, sort of like building films, environments to get lost in, pure escapism and everything like that. It probably is one of my favorite Ridley Scott films. I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite Ridley Scott film, but it's definitely up there. It's without a doubt in my top 3. But I think for this film, personally, I prefer the world and visual and the style of it more over than the characters in the film.
Yeah.
Is it my favorite Ridley Scott film? It's certainly better than Exodus, Godson.
Oh God, I completely forgot he did that one.
He's made some truly terrible ones.
Yeah,
it's up there with Gladiator.
Yeah, I really like Kingdom of Heaven, the original Alien film. It's tough. He has done some great ones, but he has done some absolute stinkers as well.
Let's just be grateful that he's not doing a 5-film prequel series to the Blade Runner films, and that he's instead chosen Alien to take on that fun role. Instead, we got given a good director to do some good stuff with. But no, I love it. I think it is one of those films where, looking back, this film will get better with age. And from what we've heard, the sequel is well worthy and a masterpiece at the same time, which is great. Just I hope they don't milk the Blade Runner franchise, because one sequel in 30 years was risky enough. Don't push the mark if the new one's good.
And it's so very rare they just leave it at 2 movies as well. Like they always seem to want to go for that.
Well, we'll get Blade Runner 2079 in 30 years' time from now. At least we've got Jared Leto.
Yeah.
Yay. Hopefully he's good in this one.
Everyone knows that my favorite Ridley Scott film of all time is Prometheus, closely followed by Alien Covenant. But I can't even keep a straight face saying that. But no, it's difficult to call. I really do like Alien. I think that is I stated it was my favorite horror, second favorite horror film of all time. Very closely behind The Thing. But yeah, Gladiator's a solid film. I'm just looking for his film, what he's done. I like Matchstick Men. Yeah, that's really Thelma and Louise is a good film as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's difficult choice if you're going to go for it.
Maybe some people in the comments can let us know. If anyone watches this review, get comments in what's your favorite Ridley Scott film. Maybe it is Blade Runner, it could be any other ones. Although if anyone does say Alien Covenant and you're legitimately serious, I know we're all entitled to your own opinion, but your opinion is wrong. I'm sorry.
Or Prometheus. Prometheus is just as bad, if not worse.
The Martian was really good. I'm thinking if I'm trying to think of his recent one.
That's more.
The Martian.
I haven't watched that a second time though, so I've only seen that the once.
The Martian falls into one of those films where it completely removes me from the kind of basis of the film based off one scene, and that's the Iron Man scene or the Wall-E scene or whatever it's called, and it completely removes me from the film. And a lot of films have done that. I may do even a list of films one day, films where it completely removes me from like the story and the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. I just see it as a Drew Goddard film. He wrote the script, he had everything done, and he left at the very, very last minute. So, you know, it
was more him.
He'd already had the cast and stuff. So it's one of them where, yeah, there's a reason that's probably Ridley Scott's best film in a long time as well, is that he got given the doctor's role doing the least input on it too.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I have to look into. I didn't know really all the ins and outs of it, but yeah, I've said everything on Blade Runner. Have you guys anything else to say? Or yeah.
Stay tuned for Sunday for our review of Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, I think our next movie review will actually be Goodbye Christopher Robin. I still need to get to the cinema to see that one. I know me and you Tate, are going to be on that one. But yes, if you do want to see us talk more Blade Runner, Sunday will be a big movie review for that one because I know we're all looking forward to that one. I am recording another trailer reaction tomorrow. I'm doing one on Murder on the Orient Express. Might even do one for Punisher. And there's actually been a new Pokemon trailer gone out today for a new Pokemon film that's coming out later this year. So maybe I'll get nostalgic on that one too. There's a lot of stuff coming onto the channel. I know recently we haven't been as active, but this week is pretty packed for movie reviews. I know we've got Lego Ninjago. Next week we've got Thor. So please do hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot more stuff coming out. That'll do it for our review today. And until the next one, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.